moving unnaturally, alive with intention. And the war began, not as a physical clash, but as a battle of control, of will, of identity. Elsa's powers surging in waves that reshaped the landscape, towering walls of ice rising and collapsing, the sky darkening as if reality itself was bending under the pressure of what she had become. And Jack moved through it all, not attacking, not defending, but reaching, always reaching, dodging shards of ice that could shatter mountains, calling her name not as a command, but as a reminder, because he knew this wasn't about overpowering her, it was about bringing her back. And yet, every second that passed, the entity grew stronger, adapting, learning, using her love as fuel, amplifying every emotion until it became something uncontrollable. And Elsa screamed, not in anger, but in pain, her voice echoing across the frozen battlefield. "Why won't you just let me go?" And Jack stopped, just for a second, his chest rising and falling as he looked at her, not as an opponent, but as the person he had fallen for. And he said something that changed everything. "Because losing you once already destroyed me, I won't survive it twice." And for a moment, time hesitated, because those words reached deeper than anything else had, cutting through layers of darkness, touching something untouched, something real. And Elsa's expression shifted, her eyes softening as tears formed, freezing before they could fall, and she whispered, almost like a memory, "Then don't make me the reason you break again." But the entity would not allow that moment to grow. It reacted violently, surging forward, taking control more aggressively than ever before, her body moving against her will, her powers exploding outward in a force so intense it sent Jack crashing across the ice, the ground beneath him cracking as he struggled to stand. And now the truth became undeniable. This was no longer something that could be undone by words alone. Because the more he held on to her, the more the entity used that connection against them. And as Elsa advanced toward him, her steps slow but unstoppable, her eyes now glowing with a cold light that wasn't entirely hers, Jack realized something he had been refusing to accept, that love alone might not be enough to save her. And yet, even with that realization, he didn't run, didn't fight back the way he could have. Because deep down, he knew that hurting her, even to save her, would destroy whatever was left of them. And so he made a choice. Not one of strategy, but of surrender, dropping his staff to the ground, letting it slide across the ice as he stood there, completely defenseless, completely open. And Elsa stopped just a few steps away, her power building, the air around her vibrating with destructive force. And he looked at her, truly looked at her, past the darkness, past the fear, into the part of her that still remembered. And he said quietly, "If this is how it ends, then let it be you." And those words broke something, not in the world, but inside her, because love, real love, doesn't fight to survive. It chooses to stay even when it knows it might not. And the entity, sensing the shift, pushed harder, forcing her to raise her hand, ice forming sharply around it, aimed directly at him. And for a second, everything balanced on the edge of a single decision, a single moment that would define everything. And then, instead of attacking him, Elsa turned that power inward once again, but this time, not to freeze, not to escape, but to destroy the connection the entity had used to bind itself to her, a move so dangerous, so irreversible, that even the entity reacted with panic, trying to stop her, trying to hold on. But it was too late, because she had made her choice, not to save herself, not to save the world, but to save him. And as the energy collapsed inward, as light and darkness collided within her, the force of it tore through the battlefield, shattering everything in a blinding explosion of ice and silence. And when it was over, when the storm cleared and the world dared to breathe again, Jack found himself lying on the frozen ground, disoriented, his body aching as he forced himself to stand, his eyes searching desperately for her, calling her name into the empty air. But there was no answer, only silence. And then he saw it, at the center of where she had stood. Not a statue this time, not a frozen form, but nothing, just a faint trace of frost slowly fading into the air, as if she had never been there at all. And the realization hit him not like a storm, but like a void, quiet, absolute, irreversible, because this time she hadn't frozen herself. She had erased herself completely, removing the entity by removing the very connection it had to exist. And in doing so, she hadn't just saved him, she had ended herself in a way that left nothing behind. No body, no memory the world could hold on to. Only him, only the one person who would remember her not as a legend, not as a queen, but as the girl who once laughed with him under a sky full of stars. And Jack fell to his knees, the weight of that loss crushing him in a way he couldn't fight, couldn't escape. His voice breaking as he whispered her name again and again, as if saying it enough times might bring her back. But the wind didn't respond. The world didn't change, because some sacrifices don't leave room for miracles. And as time passed, the kingdom moved on. Stories faded, legends softened, but Jack remained. Not the same, never the same, wandering through a world that felt colder than ever, not because of ice, but because of absence. And yet, even in that emptiness, even in that quiet, something lingered, not physically, not visibly, but in the way the wind moved when he stood still, in the way the snow fell a little softer around him, in the way certain moments felt warmer than they should. And one night, standing alone where everything had ended, Jack closed his eyes and whispered, not in hope, not in expectation, but simply because he needed to. If you're still out there, in any form, in any way, I'm still here. And for a second, just a second, the wind brushed past him gently, not chaotic, not wild, but soft, familiar, and his breath caught, his eyes opening slowly, because some endings don't return what was lost, but they leave behind just enough to prove that it once existed, and that sometimes love doesn't survive in presence, it survives in feeling, in memory, in the quiet spaces where something unseen still chooses to stay. And as the screen fades into white, the final truth settles in, not as a question, but as a realization that lingers long after the story ends, that some love stories are not meant to be lived forever. They are meant to be felt once and remembered for eternity.